We are recording, unfortunately. Yeah. So, Janet, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm in New York City, and I don't know, I'm probably, uh, I love empathy circles, and have see the benefit of them and have benefited of them. And yeah, regarding definitions, I'm maybe fuzzier. I like Venerable Rabina's definition that from a Buddhist perspective, compassion and empathy are the same thing. So, maybe not too helpful, but yeah, here I am.
Yeah, I like that actually. Colin?
Hi, everyone. I am based in Berlin, originally from Ireland, and I am an EQ coach, assessor, and practitioner. So I have a special interest in empathy. Recently completed my training as a facilitator, and I'm just really happy to be able to contribute to this project.
Okay, Lou?
I'm Lou Zwire. I'm in Northern California. I've been working at Edwin for a long time and helped develop the Empathy Circle Facilitators training. And I think, I think having more clarity about what we mean by empathy for use in the Empathy Circle, or what we're trying to, the culture of empathy that we're trying to develop, I think is helpful, because there are many different people have many different views of empathy or definitions of empathy. So I think that's really helpful.
Okay, thanks. Crystal?
Well, I just love everybody's responses. Kara, I love that you want to go fast. I love that Lou wants to continue to define empathy. And, for me, it's really simple. I'm here because I believe empathy is about being a human first. I believe it's a skill. I believe it's something that we can learn. And there's steps. And I'm just excited to continue to explore those with each of you.
Okay, thanks. Wendy?
Yes, I'm based in the north of the UK, in Cumbria, the Lake District. And I'm here for all the reasons that everybody else gave. I have deep interest in empathy and compassion. And I think in order to really move forward, we need to know what we're talking about. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. DJ?
I'm DJ. I'm in Florida. The Cat 3 was in the neighborhood of my home, but I wasn't actually in my home. I was up north with my horses, and it wasn't so bad here. So that's good. Empathy is so much. It's so big. So it's the listening and the speaking and the connections and the relations and the perceptions and the worldview. So I love being here and I love talking about it. Thank you for having me.
Well, glad to hear you're safe. We have Larry, who's also not part of this group, but the empathy, community, and he's actually in Daytona Beach area. So I think I got a message from him that the water was up to his doorstep, and but he said, I've gone through 30 years of these, and he felt pretty confident. He lives on the second floor, so hopefully he's doing okay. So Violetta, we're just checking in, name, location, and why you're interested in this project.
Okay, sorry, I'm always late. I have 4 clients back to back, and I just need a brief 10-minute, 5-minute to grab lunch and some tea. I'm in Illinois, obviously with an accent, so I think we've met. We all have met before. Why I'm interested in empathy. I've shared it several times. I started with a purely clinical interest in empathy, how it helps the process of healing. But I think the more I learned and the deeper I got, I was becoming more passionate about empathy as a way of being, as Rogers says. I'm strongly affected by Rogers. That's how I discovered empathy, by reading his book overnight, and scrapped my thesis at that point and decided to work on empathy, and have been in empathy ever since.
Okay, I think that was everyone, right? So I just put the link in. I see a bunch of people already there. 5 people are in that room. That's the agenda for today, and for note taking too. You can scroll down to the bottom of the page and take any notes from the meeting today. And so what the plan was is we're actually going through each of the 7 sessions now of the training, and we're starting with sort of a just a prototype of session 1 now of the training. And that is, and I sent out a video. I had created a video of the overview of the session as well as the presentation. It was all together in one, and I just finished creating 2 separate videos, and I sent that out. So I don't know if anybody saw that, but there's the overview, outline and overview of the session, and then there's the presentation video. So did anybody see all those? Just checking. Anybody see? I've got a couple of people.
I think I watched the one where they're both together.
Okay. There's a new version so that it's not quite as long and it kind of is focused. But what I thought I would do is just give a short introduction review, just to review it, and the first part of it, of the session outline, and then we would go into doing an empathy circle on the question that we have for this session. So hey, Priyanka, everybody introduce themselves, their name and location, why they're interested in the project. So do you want to just do that?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Priyanka. I'm in Bangalore, and I'm working on the self-empathy part of the project.
Okay, I'm going to put this slideshow up here and do a screen share of the screen. So this is in the presentation. This is, I went through this on the video, but I'm just going to give a short overview for a few minutes here. And this is our Defining Empathy, a Way of Being for a Better World. This is the module 2, which this module 1 was our Empathy Circle Facilitator training. This is the module 2 in the series, and this is session 1. And this is just the overview and outline of the 7-week training. And this is the version 2 of this video. And so this session 1 currently, this is all sort of open for redevelopment, but at least that we get sort of a prototype, something to start with, that this session would be, 2.5 hours. We would start, it would use the same sort of a format as our facilitation training. We have a full group, people come in for 30 minutes, and then we have a breakout room for an hour and a half of doing some kind of exercises, and then a full group debrief for about 30 minutes. And all this can change. I just want to get something down so we have something to work with. And I wanted to just give a short outline here of the full group, how that would look for the first 30 minutes. We have a welcome, the trainers say a little something about the project or about the course. We have a participant check-in. So, why are you interested in defining empathy and taking this course? So that's very much like the facilitator training. And then we have our course objectives, and then the course outline of the 7-week. We'd have a little bit of a presentation, but the main presentation would be a separate video, which I sent out to everyone. So we try to use have as much of the didactic information component be not in the training itself, but in a separate video that people can watch on their own. And then we have our breakout description, describing what we're going to do in the breakout room. And then for the course objectives, thank you, Wendy, for your suggestions. I did add, they were a little bit more concise. So I included those. So the first is to develop a deep understanding of the meaning of empathy, is our first course objective. The second is to learn the empathy as a way of being definition model. And this is sort of based on the work of Carl Rogers. And we're going to begin to map the definition onto the experience of the empathy circle. So we want to have everyone be able to identify the different parts of empathy and how they fit to the in the empathy circle, and then reflect on the blocks to empathy. Because it helps to understand what, something is, empathy is, for example, if you can understand what it's not and be able to compare that. So we'll be reviewing that. And we want people to be familiar with the blocks. And we want participants to be able to compare the way of being definition to other definition models. There's a lot of other models out there. So the course so far is, this is the outline of the course. And lesson 1 is the empathy as a way of being model. So just kind of becoming familiar with that, and an opportunity to share what your definition of empathy is and how it relates to the empathy circle. And then lesson 2 is going to be about other oriented empathy. So that's like it's kind of the standard understanding of empathy, how you empathize with other people. And then lesson 3 is self-empathy. How do we tap into our own, own selves, or feel into ourselves? And then there's lesson 4, which is imaginative empathy, which is going to be maybe a new concept for a lot of people, but we'll be going and doing a deep dive into that in lesson 4. Lesson 5 is relational empathy. 6 is the blocks to empathy, and then we'll have the other definition models that we're going to compare. So that's sort of the outline of the full 7 weeks of the course so far. It's all open. This is like the first iteration of it, so it may change, but just to get the ball rolling, we have something tangible. And then we would have then there's a presentation. I haven't really prepared the presentation so much for what we would have in the first section here. Then we do a breakout room description and our topic today. So what we want to do is have it actually go into an empathy circle. And the question is going to be like, how do you personally define empathy, and how does your definition map onto the experience of the empathy circle? So the idea in lesson 1 is that we share this model of the empathy is a way of being model, and people watch that on their own. And then there'll be a little bit of an introduction to it. And then we want to really have a space for everyone to come and share what their definition of empathy is, and then be able to map it onto the empathy circle itself. And that presentation kind of is an example of how to do that. So hopefully that'll stimulate and explain to people how they can start doing that itself. So yeah, I didn't want to go around just as that as an intro before we go into an empathy circle, just to go around to hear from everyone, like any comments or questions that you have about this basic framework. And you can start with DJ.
I just have one question. You just said people can come in and contribute their own definition of empathy and map it, right? You said map. And what does that map look like? Are you talking about like something that's similar to cognitive mapping, conceptual mapping, or something different?
Yeah, so the mapping, what I'm meaning by mapping in the video that I sent out, I went through each of the section, the facets. So we're defining empathy as a way of being and using the model of the diamond, that there's a diamond is one thing and it has different facets to it. So and I went through those facets, and said, here's other oriented empathy, and then gave an example in the empathy circle. I actually showed the model of see, I don't
So
have
the
that
map
one.
is the diamond.
The map is how the experience relates to something in the empathy circle. So maybe there's a better word for
No,
it.
no, I was just
Uh-huh.
curious. I
Okay.
was just curious. No, that's fine. The diamond's fine, I think. I like it, multifaceted. Yeah.
So when we say, if somebody says, oh, for me, empathy is sensing into somebody else's experience, and then that is like the listener, the active listener, sensing into the experience of the speaker. And then that's like showing how that's actually playing out in the empathy circle. So anyway, that's what I mean by map. I don't know, maybe there's a better word for it, to take the experience and show it, actually demonstrate it in the empathy circle, because the definitions get kind of very abstract, and there's not a concrete mapping to something that's actually happening in real life often. So I think this is going to make it more concrete and sort of tangible, what we're talking about. So maybe I just go around here from each person. I don't know, Lou, you ready to go?
Sure. Well, so I did watch the video, the hour-long video, and I have a bunch of notes from it for you. And I can talk about those now, or I could talk about those when it's my turn to speak in the empathy circle. I have a little bit of concern about how many people we have for an empathy circle today, and whether that's really going to work or not. But and then on the thing that you just showed, there were two things that I wrote down. One was on the objective slide, that it says something about the definition of empathy. And I think it should be the definition of empathy that we are using, or our definition of empathy, as opposed to like we're trying to establish the definition of empathy, because there isn't one. And we're not trying to say that there is one or that ours is the right one. We're just trying to be clear about what we are saying when we're saying empathy. And the other note I had was about reflecting on blocks to empathy. And I have a concern about focusing a lot on the blocks to empathy and raising people's awareness about that. So I don't think it's bad to raise people's awareness, because I think empathy circle facilitators need to recognize when what's happening is not empathy, is a block to empathy, and being able to name it and being able to invite the person into something more empathic, or to assist with the reflection in a more empathic way. But I think it's really important. So the blocks to empathy are important for facilitators to understand. Other people, I'm not so sure, because I worry that focusing a lot on the blocks will just make people say, oh, that's not very empathic, you're doing it wrong, this is not empathy, will lead to a lot of criticism, self-criticism and criticism of others, by knowing this is a block, what you're doing is a block to empathy. So thinking about ways to avoid that. I'm not saying we shouldn't do anything on the blocks, but I think it's mostly important for facilitators to understand. And if we're going to educate everyone about it, we need to think about how to do it in a way that won't lead to self-criticism and criticism of others.
Okay, so I'm hearing, to just reflect a little bit of what I'm hearing. So the first part was not to be dogmatic, like this is the definition of empathy. This is what we mean by empathy.
Right.
And so it, cannot be dogmatic about it. And also that the text incorporate that. And the second part is you have concern that if there's like a block to empathy, people start judging each other, like, oh, you're not being empathic, and there's a quality of judgment there, and you want to see what we can do to keep that from happening.
Right, and the stuff, the stuff that we do in the facilitator training, that is the challenges, which is those are people that are doing things that are not empathy. the reason to do that in the facilitator training is to teach facilitators how to recognize that it's happening and how to respond to it. You know, yeah. So I don't know. We just need to think about what the context is for and for this for the empathy module.
Yeah, and you're working on that blocks to
I
empathy.
am.
So
Well,
that
I'm
we're going to
supposed
have
to,
a
yeah.
space to go into a deep dive. And
Okay.
if you're working on a
That's true.
section, you can just say, we're just going to have an empathy circle around it. Like you don't have to have everything prepared. We can just kind of have a space and kind of go into a discussion about all those concerns and stuff. So
Yeah, Crystal and I are working on that together.
great. Violetta, you want to?
I guess I'm still confused about the process in this case. For today specifically, are you now taking feedback about the whole presentation and kind of the whole
just
model?
where you are, right. So this is a little bit outside of the
Yeah.
course. We wouldn't be doing this in the course. This is the first rough draft.
Right.
Some comments, and then we'll go into an empathy circle to talk about the question that you would be doing in session 1. So this is like a little additional component.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll be playing it out today,
Yeah.
the session 1 after this one. Okay, sounds great. That's all I was wondering.
All right. Kara?
I watched the video and I have comments on it, but I think we do that as part of the circle, right? But even in this, so every time I think I get a really good idea of who we're talking to and why we're talking about it, so I can understand what we need to talk about, I get confused again. So I am unclear on who our audience is, why they're with us, and that makes it hard for me to know what we should be discussing.
Okay, so just questions about who the audience is. Maybe that's a section we should have in the outline. I'm going to put the workshop outline. Somebody in the chat said, what is the link to the video? And that's the outline for the course. And it has the links to the videos. And there's a section there, which is sort of the overview video. I mean, not video, it's an overview. Let me just show that real quick. Let's see. This is it, the findingempathy.com workshop. You scroll down and it goes through each of the sections, like lesson 1. And here's the slideshow. Here's the 16-minute video, which is the overview. Here's the presentation video. And maybe in this section here, overview, we should have who this is for example. So that's something we could add and then sort of brainstorm on that. So thanks for that. Colin, any comments?
I'm a bit confused that we're going to be talking about how we define empathy. I thought that we decided that we're using the way of being model and what Carl Rogers says empathy is. But it seems like it's just a starting point, and it's not set in stone. That's kind of a question.
Okay, so yeah, there's 2 parts to it. One is the way of being model is what the course is going to be laying out. And then, but the idea is in session 1 is we want to have everyone bring, as a starting point, where they are. So we don't want to say, this is just it. We want to say, where are you, to kind of empathize with everyone in the circle to hear what their definition is, but also to have them sort of map their definition onto the empathy circle too. So it's a space to hear where everyone is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good idea too. Okay, that clears that up.
And I even thought it could be it could have been 2 separate, but it would be 2. It's like one circle. It could have been like, hey, where is everyone? What are your definitions? And then the second one is, here is this model that we're going to explore. So it would have sort of split those 2 experiences apart, but that would make it a 8-session, training. So something to think about.
Okay.
Crystal?
Yeah. So what's alive for me right now is I'm just reflecting back on what everyone's shared. And I love the personalization of a way of being for empathy, because I think it's highly personalized, and everything that we're doing on platforms and connecting with people is moving to that personalization. And to that point, I think that having that word cloud at the beginning so that someone can define what empathy is for them as a person, that can also become part of the collective group, and that people are engaging in that process before they actually come in the door, would be able to demonstrate the elevation and the process and what it meant for them in the end. And also to be able to come up collectively with what empathy is, rather than the 10 of us being the board or that makes that decision. So I really love Menti and the possibility of doing that, and having it be part of the whole group. And to Lou's point about blockers, I think that transparency is key. And I think that this platform has the potential to be asynchronous and synchronous for those people who are introverts and might be afraid of exploring in real time learning. And I love that you have all of this out there for people to engage for that purpose as well, because I think it's a step-by-step process for people to get to the table. Thank you.
Okay, just to reflect, what I'm hearing is, so the last thing you're saying is you're appreciating the openness of it, and that people could just kind of watch this asynchronously and as well if they don't want to take part in it. And the other part is, I think I'm hearing that you don't want like a really this is the one definition, but really want to include where people are with what their definitions is, and have some way of sort of being able to include that. Okay, thanks. Wendy?
Yes, in terms of the slideshow that you just showed us, it feels pretty much there for the first part. Now's not the time necessarily to talk about the design of the slides, but further down the line, it would, in my view, it would be great if there was more white space, not the yellow background, and if the writing was not so heavy, things like that. I know these things are just personal taste, but I find the actual physical look of the slides, for my taste, quite clunky. So eventually I think it'd be great if they could be a lot lighter. But in terms of the content, it feels like it's getting there. Thank you.
Okay, so you're appreciating the content of it, but sort of the design aspect of it could do a lot of work there. And that's the idea, is we're just getting something. If you just get a rough draft, get something out there. I see this as, we go through the 7 weeks once, get something, a draft out, we go through it again, and we just keep iterating and refining it. And so any suggestions for, creating that more aesthetic design would be, great. Jana?
Yeah, just a quick response to Lou regarding his concern, or your concern. I would suggest that when presenting blocks, that for each block, also to present antidotes or solutions or answers, responses, like that.
Okay, I have a lot of thoughts on the blocks too. We can definitely, talk about that. Priyanka?
Yeah, I have a concern about how we are working together. So I recently had a conflict with Colin, which I'm not very happy about. Despite my repeatedly telling him that I don't have the time to meet for yet another meeting, I was already doing 3 of them. And even this meeting is very late for me in the night. And I'm still here because I'm very passionate about the project. Despite me repeatedly telling Edwin and Colin that I can't make it to meetings with Colin, I still kept getting emails. Can we work on this together? Can we work on this together? And then insinuations were made about why I don't want to work with somebody, and I was very upset by that. I think if we are going to practice empathy, you should also put it into practice in real life. And I really didn't like the insinuations that were made about me in the email. And it almost made me want to quit the project. And I'm very, very angry right now.
Mhm.
I think if we are going to work together, we have to have some very clear system about and common understanding about what it means to work together, because I'm very stretched thin in terms of my resources right now, because I'm getting into a new job and a lot of my life is changing. A lot of things are unpredictable. And even if I were to have the time, I don't have that kind of time to, it would take almost 15 hours a week for me to, with all these meetings. It's not, and the work that I'm putting in with the research. So it's just not possible for me. And
Can I
despite my
reflect that?
repeatedly saying that,
no.
despite my repeatedly telling Colin that I was still sent an email asking, can we work together? Even though I sent you, Edwin, and Colin an email saying, can we find Colin something else to do? Which is not related to me meeting him synchronously in a meeting.
Can I reflect what I'm hearing there, Priyanka? So I'm hearing that you're starting a new job, you have sort of time pressures, and you don't have time to kind of add other meetings, and especially with like Colin working on the self-empathy part, and you feel that you've expressed that and it wasn't heard, or you're kind of being judged about that, and so you're just feeling some anger about that, and you're feeling like you're really stretched thin at the moment.
Yeah. And insinuations were made that I don't want to work with anybody, that I want to work on this alone, which is not at all true. Without checking in with me or without, asking me anything. So I'm really offended by that, and I'm very angry. And I think the way to solve this is by finding some way of working together. Because for me, I think working remotely, where I can contribute to documents, where I'm not required to show up like in a time meeting like this, I think that would really help me, because it would help me to contribute and also not having to, have so many meetings, which really is a strain on me.
Yeah, it's a real strain to have so many meetings. And so you're really looking at like, so the workflow, how do we work together in an effective way, and some way where you can work more asynchronously. And I think that was the essence of it. So more of finding a effective workflow. Yeah,
because I'm also in a different time zone.
Yeah. And the time zone, this is like very late for you. So that makes a real struggle for you. So do you feel heard about that, or is there more?
Yeah, I feel heard.
Okay, Colin, you wanted to speak?
I don't think it's appropriate to be bringing this up here, and I would have preferred to have talked about this one-to-one. And I must say there hasn't been any conflict. There hasn't been any conflict, except there was a message that I received, which I don't want to talk about, from Priyanka. I wanted to talk to you about this, Edwin, and we said that we were going to talk after this call. My understanding, Priyanka, is that you were out of the Empathy of Culture project. That's what you communicated to me. And so this is all a big surprise, and my heart is beating 1,000,000 miles an hour right now, because I really feel under attack, and I think it's really unfair, and I don't want really to address this right now.
Yeah, so can I reflect that, Colin? So you're feeling that you don't really, you thought we were going to be talking about this after this session, and you're feeling attacked and your heart's racing, and that I think there was more. I don't know if
I'm really, really unhappy about the situation and how this has been brought up in this form at this time. I think it's inappropriate.
Yeah, so it's real inappropriate to bring up this topic in this forum here, I guess, with everybody being here, instead of doing it in a sort of a private space.
Yes, it feels like this forum has been hijacked, because we've decided what the agenda is for this for today, and it's now been hijacked, and I'm not happy about it.
Yeah, and you feel like, hey, this forum, we had a process here that we're going to do, and you feel like this has been hijacked, and you're feeling unhappy about that. Is there more?
And I'm not sure if I can continue going on today or not. I am really, really tired. I've put in a big effort to be here today because I want to be part of this project. And I just feel like I'm under huge stress at the moment.
Yeah, and you're feeling like you're under stress, you're not sure if you want to be part of the project. You've put in a lot of time and energy and it to take part in this because you really want to be part of the project. So is there more?
The only other thing I will say, Evan, is you know the email that's being talked about, and so it's all there out in the open. Whatever's being discussed right now, you have access to that email, and it's something that we can talk about later. There's nothing more to this.
Yeah, so we can talk about this later. So is there more, Priyanka, or do you feel ready to move on and talk about this afterwards?
Yeah,
Or
I think
you-
it's not inappropriate to bring it up at all because it impacts how we work together and how the workflow is. And I'm sure that this conflict is going to come up with other people as well. And I think we have to decide how we work together and what boundaries we need to respect. Like if someone says, I don't have time to meet you, I can't meet you, then sending repeated emails, I think that is really a violation of someone's boundaries. And I don't think it's inappropriate because we need to decide how we are going to work together and we need to set those boundaries so that everyone can feel safe.
So you
I
do
think it's
think it's
important.
appropriate, right? You're feeling it is appropriate to actually talk about this because it's addressing the question of how we are going to work together. And there's a need for boundaries, that people have boundaries, and you have to have a sense of clarity about those boundaries.
Yes.
My question is, why couldn't this have been done between the three of us? Why is it being done right now? Why is this being brought up right now? We have an agenda. Why have an agenda if it's going to be hijacked for other reasons? This is something that doesn't need to be addressed right now in this forum. And I am completely shocked and surprised that Priyanka is here, because Priyanka, you told me clearly that you were out of the project. And I don't want you to be out of the project, but that's what you said, and now you're here. I don't know what to think.
So could we go into an empathy circle process here where if we just discuss this, kind of use this as an opportunity to use the empathy circle process just to kind of work through this. I'm going to refer to Lou, since he's do you have any thoughts about this? Or
Yeah, I agree. We have a lot of people here, and people came for a specific purpose this morning, and I don't know that everybody wants to use this time to do conflict resolution. I understand that there's a conflict, and I'm not saying it should be ignored, but I don't know that everyone wants to spend their time that they came this morning to give you feedback that you asked for to do conflict resolution right now. And I'm not saying that what Priyanka's bringing up is not important. I'm just saying that this is not what people came to do, is a conflict resolution session. And I don't know that everyone here is needed in order to resolve this conflict. So the people who are needed to resolve the conflict should be engaged in the process. And so, I would say for myself, if that's what you want to do now, I would like to step out because I have other things that I could do.
So Priyanka and Colin, can we talk about this at another time? Would that work for the three of us to discuss it so we can stay on the schedule? Does that work, Priyanka?
Yeah, I just wanted to express it to get it out of my system. It doesn't have to be resolved in this meeting.
Okay, so you just wanted to express it. And Colin, are you good with that too?
I agree that it shouldn't be part of this forum. What Lou's saying, and things are not okay. And I'm not sure if I want to continue. Actually, I do want to talk to you about it. And if Priyanka wants to be there too, that's fine.
Okay, so
But
we're talking.
there were some really hurtful things said. So that shouldn't be discussed in this group, and they should be talked about if we are to be working together all.
Okay, so you're good with us talking after this? We had a scheduled to talk, so we could continue.
Yeah, I mean, talking after this may not be practical for Priyanka because it's pretty late where she is. So but
Yeah, we'll
yeah,
have to
setting
find
up a
another time
to
to
do that.
schedule that.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we will schedule another time to talk about this, and this is part of it. I just want to say that conflict is fine, you know, to have issues and conflict and that, but that we use the empathy circle, that we're willing to have an empathic dialogue about it and to use the process for talking about it. So with that, we can move on. So we were going to, with the outline here, let me bring that up. We had this question of, well, the idea with this session was that we do what I showed, the first half hour, and then we would go into an empathy circle to discuss how do you define empathy and how does your definition map onto the experience of the empathy circle. So maybe we can divide into two groups to do that, because that's what we would do it in the first session. And so I'll actually create the two rooms. And let's see, and let me just create those rooms. It's kind of a large group to have everyone to do this. And so we'll go for about an hour, see, we're 44, about an hour, and yeah, go for about an hour, then we'll come back to the full group to debrief. And did we lose somebody, or do people are turning on their, okay, no.
So we lost Priyanka,
Oh, Priyanka.
and Colin turned his video. Several people have turned their video off.
Okay. So Lou, would you facilitate one circle and do the recording? Can you record? Does that
Sure.
work for you?
Sure.
Let me just make sure you have co-host permission. You have co-host, and so we'll record this one. And okay, so we're ready to go into the circles, and we'll have about an hour. The topic is in the chat, and we'll have 5-minute turns, and yeah, then we'll just experience what we would do in the first session. So everybody ready? Here we go.
There we go. Now we
Okay,
got a boss.
there we go. Okay, so whoever would like to be the first speaker, select your listener, and we'll start. And I have the time here and so the topic again is how do you define empathy, and how does your definition map onto what's happening in the empathy circle, and anything else that's alive for you. If you have something else that's up for you, feel free to talk about that. So who would like to start?
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Right.
Remember how last time we were putting in our notes? Is that appropriate during the empathy circle or not?
Yeah, you can write, like, is a silent listener, you can type in your notes, or even if you're needing to remember what the person is saying, you can feel, you're welcome to type in notes. Yeah. So no
Okay,
problem.
and which link is that? I'm sorry, Edwin. Which link is the notes?
That is right here. Let me put that into the chat. There it is. That's
Thank you.
the 30th. Yeah. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there's on page 2, there's a note-taking section. So I appreciate everyone taking notes. So anybody want to start and select your listener? Go ahead. Who are you speaking to?
You're talking to me, right?
Yeah, DJ.
Yeah. Colin, will you be my listener?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I've been thinking about, empathy a lot, like all of us have been thinking about it. And one of the things that's kind of difficult about empathy is that we're talking about it in the context of this empathy circle, but really empathy is like, our way of being and our way of life.
Okay, so you're saying that you've been thinking about empathy a lot, and there's a lot of focus on empathy in terms of the empathy circle, but it's much broader than that. It's a way of life.
Exactly. And, we're real people, and, we have our ways of being, and now we're kind of trying to define that way of being within an empathy circle, but really it's about empathy in our way of being, separate from the circle.
Okay, so it is about this way of being, but not just in the circle. It's also about this way of being outside of the circle in our everyday lives.
Yes, and it's almost like empathy in the way of being is being amplified in this really profound way because we're in this project, and that it's almost like we become hyper aware of empathy.
Okay, so there's this amplifying effect. Sorry, I'm just hearing a noise. There's this amplifying effect that's making us, like in your words, hyper aware of empathy, as we think about empathy as a way of being.
Yes, and I believe in the self, and the self is different for me, I think, than other people. And I think empathy is different for me than other people. And I'm not really sure I can even define it in a way that would apply to another person.
It sounds like you've got your own personal view of what empathy is, and it may not be shared by others.
Right. It probably isn't shared by others. Right. But I'm wondering what that all means and what to do with all of that. I'm kind of in a quandary.
So it sounds like you're confused about this, that your definition of empathy is most likely different to other people's.
Right. And so I want to be able to connect with this project, and I want to be a part of it. But at the same time, I have to be true to myself, and I have to self-reflect and define what it is for me as a human being outside the empathy circle. Because when I come inside the empathy circle, I'm still me.
Mm-hmm. So you have a real desire to be part of this project, but you're thinking what's important to you is to understand what it means to be empathic outside of the circle, and not just in the circle. Yeah, because it's you, whether it's outside the circle or in the circle.
Yeah, I feel fully heard.
Okay, thank you. I'm struggling a little at the moment.
Who are you speaking to?
And that's a very good question that shows I'm struggling. Edwin,
Yep.
will you be my listener?
So I'm hearing you're struggling a little bit.
Right. And kind of finding it hard to breathe as well, because I kind of feel like I've been under attack. So my breath is right up here. So I'm trying to feel into my body and in a way practice self-empathy to understand how I'm reacting to what's just happened.
Mhm. So you're feeling that you're under attack, and your breath is kind of coming in the higher part of your body, and you're just trying to understand what's happened.
And it's telling me how important it is for me to practice my breathing, to be able to breathe deeply in situations that like this that may arise in an empathy circle.
Yeah, so it's just showing you that you need to practice your breathing for things that may come up in the empathy circle. So maybe a stressful situation that you just have to practice your breathing.
And my heartbeat isn't racing like it was before, but it was racing so fast. It was telling me something, and I want to be able to understand that better. And I think that by practicing self-empathy, I can get that felt sense and come to a deeper understanding.
Yeah, so that your heart racing, that you're seeing that as a message, it's telling you something, and you want to be, the self-empathy is to sense into that and see what that's telling you.
Mm-hmm. And I'm feeling sad now because I think it's because I'm hearing you saying back what I'm thinking out loud. So I can see this is having some kind of effect on me. That this painful experience has been validated.
Yeah, so you feel a sense of sadness hearing that, you know, that being reflected, what you were saying, and I wasn't quite clear that there is a sadness because it's been relegated, or I didn't quite catch that.
Because of this painful experience has been validated.
Oh, validated. So there's a sadness because you're sharing your pain, and that pain has been validated.
Right. And from my background in emotional intelligence and my own personal struggles, I know how important it is to have my feelings validated, because when they're not validated, it can be very harmful.
Yeah, so you've done some training in emotional intelligence, and you know that having your feelings validated, that's really important, and so you're sort of experiencing that now.
So I'm seeing real benefit right now in real time to the empathy circle. How it can allow me to connect with this felt sense and validate my pain and try to understand myself better.
So you're seeing the benefit of the empathy circle, how it supported you in expressing yourself, sharing your pain, and how it's been validated, and so you're actually seeing a benefit of the empathy circle for that.
I'm still trying to get my breathing in order because it's still very, very shallow and very tight. And I want to perhaps take a short break because I think that would be an act of self-care and something that I need.
Yeah, so you're just noticing how your breathing is shallow, and you're trying to address that. And you're seeing that thinking perhaps taking a break would help with that.
I feel fully heard.
Okay, can I speak back to you then, Colin?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the empathy circle, as a structure, can hold conflict. So, you know, we use the empathy circle for conflict mediation. So I just want to share that.
So you're just pointing out to me that the empathy circle can serve the purpose of mediating in conflicts.
And so empathy is sort of sensing into the experience of others and it not being sort of suppressed. And the empathy circle, if we're defining empathy, is like sensing into someone else's experience, even though if there's a lot of pain, you know, kind of floating around. I think that is the structure that holds that empathic supports that empathy.
And now, Edwin, I can't focus well enough to be able to reflect it back. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. I can just say it again. So the empathy circle does support sort of conflict. I'll start with that.
Okay, so the empathy circle does support conflict.
And I think kind of staying with it and being heard, having a space to be heard can be grounding and a way to work through conflict.
Okay, so you're saying staying with it could be a good idea. It can ground a person and help them find a way through the conflict.
Yeah. Breathe deeply.
Yeah.
And if you reflect that back.
Yes, and you're suggesting that I should breathe deeply.
Yeah, I'm kind of suggesting I breathe deeply too. It's like, I want to breathe deeply.
So you're also suggesting that you should breathe deeply.
Yeah, and I'm noticing if I'm breathing deeply, it kind of creates kind of more spaciousness within myself.
And you're noticing by breathing deeply, it's creating more space within you.
And yeah, I was a bit surprised about kind of, you know, this conflict that came up, but I see it also that the empathy circle can hold the conflict, you know, so I'm kind of like, okay, you know, whatever comes up, and that's, yeah, so pause there.
Yeah, so you are surprised about this having happened, but you're also expressing confidence that the empathy circle can hold a conflict like this.
And I'm grateful for your participation and staying with it.
You're saying that you're grateful for me sticking with this.
And for your participation.
And also for my participation.
And I really appreciate sort of your thinking and, you know, the work that you've done on exploring self-empathy. You already like right away started writing up things and, you know, just really applied yourself. And I really appreciate that.
So you're expressing your gratitude for my contribution so far on the self-empathy.
Yeah, I thought it was very insightful.
Okay, so you're saying that you think it's insightful?
I feel fully heard.
Okay.
And you're up again. Select your listener.
Kara, can I ask Kara, please, to be my active listener?
I'm listening.
I'm grateful to Edwin for his words of support and encouragement.
You're grateful to Edwin for his words of support and encouragement.
And I do think I can stick this out. I do think that I have the strength to go through this, to connect with my breath and to calm myself. And it's because of this process that we're doing right now.
And thanks to this process, you think that you can do this, all of it.
And it's also making me a little bit emotional hearing that being said back to me, because I did want to run away. It's the fight or flight mode, I guess. And I realized that through this to this empathic listening, that I can find another way of being.
And it's a little emotional hearing I can do it repeated back to you when you were in that fight or flight mode. And through this process, you really did come to a new place where you can do this.
And also hearing you say that, and the way you said that I can do this, is also giving me more hope and strength. And I'm feeling the empathy in the room right now.
And hearing I can do this said that way, it lets you also hear the rest of the empathy and support from the room.
Right, and just on that point, you know, how you said that, how you said the word can, it conveyed a lot of meaning for me, and it has a certain power, the way we say the words that we say.
And you're noting by the way that I said can, how that generated emotion and how impactful the way that we say words can be.
Right, yeah, and it's just reminding me I want to do this more often when I'm reflecting. It's not just the choice of words, it's how I deliver them.
And it's an excellent reminder that when reflecting, it's not just the words you use, but how you use them.
I feel fully heard.
I will speak to, absolutely, sorry, not responsive. I will speak to Jana. Are you in a spot you can hear?
I'm not sure how many minutes I have, so it might be okay.
Echo heard, make it fast. I can do that.
But then, yeah, then someone else might want to speak after I listen.
What does empathy mean to me, and what is alive for me right now? You know, I think that we have already experienced some of the magic of what empathy circles are.
So you're reflecting what empathy means to you, and that you think that we've already experienced here some of the magic of empathy circles.
It's, you know, we are by nature creatures of judgment. That's just the way our brains work. But when you take the judgmental part out of it, the judgments don't sting so bad.
So I'm not sure I understood. We're judgmental creatures by our nature, but when you take the judgmental out of it, then the judgments don't sting so badly.
Yeah, so we are judgment creatures by nature. Brains function on, is this good, safe, bad, you know, that's our brains work that way. But just because we make a judgment does not mean we have to be judgmental.
So you're making a distinction here that even though our brains work in this judging way, you know, this is good, bad, safe, not safe, we don't have to be judgmental, even though those thoughts arise.
Yeah, so for me, if we're talking about defining judgment, it is living in that space between judgment and judgmental.
So you're saying that we can live between the space of judging and being judgmental.
Yeah, that it's human, that empathy supports the being of human, which is what we are, without being mad at somebody else for also being human.
So empathy supports us being human without being mad at anyone for also being human.
Yeah, and it's a small, teeny tiny difference, but goodness, doesn't it make an impact?
That teeny tiny difference makes an enormous difference.
And I feel fully heard. That is what is alive for me right now.
Thank you. So, DJ, you listen to me? And I might have to get up in the middle, so it might be short. Yeah, I like the word discernment. I use the word discernment versus judging or judgmental, which I kind of use synonymously, but I appreciate the distinction and I understand. Yeah, so I'll pause there.
Okay, you use the word discernment instead of judgment or judgmental, but you appreciate Kara's explanation.
Yeah, so yeah, we can be, the more discerning we are, actually the less judgmental we are.
The more discerning we are, actually, the less judgmental we are.
Yeah. And I appreciate Colin for your openness and for your ability to articulate, to express your feelings, and to share and for sharing them here. That's an honor for you to share them here.
You are honored by being in the presence of Colin and his willingness to share his feelings.
Yeah, and empathy circles are really a very precious container. I really appreciate Edwin for this brainchild and sharing it with the world.
You really appreciate empathy circles as a container, and you're thanking Edwin for bringing this to the world.
Yeah, and and no one doesn't belong in an empathy circle. So I hope that your individual definition of empathy has plenty of room in an empathy circle. And yeah.
I don't know who the you is, but it may be me. So the individual in the empathy circle, everybody's included in an empathy circle or could be included in the empathy circle. And you're hoping that you, being the plural you, I don't know, definition of individual empathy is inclusive of the empathy circle.
Yeah, well, I acknowledge Colin, Edwin, and I want to acknowledge you and say that your individual, you DJ, your individual definition of empathy that you feel doesn't sit anywhere, maybe that I hope you find room in an empathy circle for your personal definitions, because there's room for everybody in an empathy circle. Empathy circles are just for human beings.
Okay, so you're saying Kara and Edwin and Colin and me, who are present here with you, you're hoping that our individual definitions of empathy circles, that we feel free to express those and to be here in the empathy circle, because we're all human beings and we all belong here.
Okay, I feel more or less good. I can get up, so that's great. Thanks.
Kira, would you be my listener?
I'm listening.
Okay, great. A big part of my empathy is intuition. And I've been talking a lot about it with folks that I know that are involved in this defining project. And this whole idea is, I'll just stop there.
A big part of your empathy is intuition, and you have been discussing that with a lot of people. And a big part of that is
that sometimes your intuition, or sometimes my intuition, goes into assumptions. And when it goes into assumptions, and we could call that bias, we could call it judgments, we could call it many, many different things, but it's not intuition, I don't think. It can be very, very harmful and backfire, actually, on the whole empathetic approach.
so sometimes intuition goes into assumptions, and we can label that a lot of different ways. But when we assume, you make an ass out of you and me, it can be harmful.
Yeah. And this seems to be part of my journey as somebody who is very busy and very involved in multiple projects and feeling a lot of pressure to make money at the same time that I'm being creative.
So for you, this comes up a lot due to the nature of what you do. You are creative and engaging and also trying to make money doing all of those things.
Right, but I'm not making money doing all those things. I mean, if I were, you know, I would probably be okay. But this idea that there's a certain amount of pressure in life to make money, in contrast to what you really want to do, and how you have to balance that. And there are times in your life when you're forced to face it. And I think it brings on different kinds of pressures.
So, well, you're not currently making money at it. It is still what you are thriving to do. And there comes a lot of pressure with that, whether it's your own pressure or societal pressure. There's baggage that comes with making money and the assumption that what you do has to be connected to that.
Exactly. And so getting back to the empathy part and the intuition part, I think these extraneous stressors come in, and maybe it's subconscious, maybe it's not, but they interfere with the empathetic process. And it's not something conscious. It's not something people do deliberately, but it destroys whatever kind of empathy might be there. And it becomes actually problematic.
So going back to how this impacts empathy is that when we have these intuitions versus assumptions, when we bring in baggage to the process, it can impact the process, sometimes disruptively.
Yes, and this is a dilemma or a problem that I'm just exploring now because of some incidents that happened to me recently where things were misinterpreted, and I'm often misinterpreted and often misrepresented.
And this is alive for you right now because things happened recently where you were misinterpreted and misrepresented, and you will have found that to be something that happens more than you would like.
Yes, and I do want to change it about myself. I don't know if I can, but I'm hoping that this project will help me harness my ability to be intuitive and to be present and to let go of all extraneous stress and let that intuition lead me to that place of magic.
And you are hoping to impact this with yourself, and that this process may help you do that so that you can live in that intuition, in that present state, and let go of all of the extraneous things so that you can hear and be heard.
I feel fully heard, Karen.
Let's go to Colin. You ready for more?
Yes, in small chunks would be nice.
Deal. I will go in bits. So what is alive for me right now is I want to talk about the video that was sent around.
So you'd like to talk about Evelyn's video. That's something that's important to you now.
I loved the information that was delivered in it.
Oh, so it sounds like you really you loved the information that was in it.
I did. And I particularly was aware of the repetition builds retention, which is one of my favorite tools to use in any sharing of information.
Okay, and so you noticed that everyone was repeating, and that that it's more likely to lead to retention, and this is a tool that you're a big fan of.
Yes. Literally one critique.
But there's one thing.
And the one thing is I found that I got the information when I watched it at 2 times speed.
So it sounds like it was going too fast for you.
Other way around. I watched it at 2 times the normal speed, and the information came through smoother and clearer at that.
Okay, so you've clarified that what you meant was that when you watch it at twice the speed, then that's when you really understand what's being said.
And this could be a me thing because I am a high-paced individual. Fact.
Okay, so this may not be the same for everyone, but it is for you.
But in an empathetic way, we do know that humans have, through new and advanced ways, really limited attention spans.
But there's this research out there to say that us humans, we don't have long attention spans.
And so while I think the presentation and the information was fabulous, saying more with less will keep more people engaged and we can hit a broader audience.
Okay, so although it was a great presentation and really useful information, you're recommending that maybe saying more with less might be the way to go. It might be able to engage more people and reach a broader audience.
I particularly like the yawning videos. Yes, I did yawn.
I think you were saying something about the yawning videos that you did like them and that actually it worked. You did yawn as well.
Yes. Yeah, no, I feel fully heard. Thank you, Colin.
You're welcome. Edwin, will you be my active listener?
Listening.
I'm going to change tack a little because something happened yesterday that was quite a big deal in my journey as an empathy circle facilitator.
So you're going to shift directions and talk about something that happened in your journey yesterday as a facilitator, empathy circle facilitator?
So I facilitated my first empathy circle yesterday evening, having completed the course, in the last month, I suppose. And so it was, it was. I have this sense of achievement that yes, I can do it.
Yeah, you facilitated your first circle and it sounds like you went well and you just felt a sense of achievement, accomplishment that you could, I can do this.
Yes. And I noticed that some people in the circle were actually getting quite emotional because of how powerful the experience was for them. And I wasn't expecting that, but it was really beautiful to see.
And the people in the circle were getting emotional and there's a real power to it. And you really liked seeing that. Real appreciation of that.
That experience motivates me to keep showing up here for the Defining Empathy project. It shows me that the work that we're doing has a real impact on other people.
Yeah, and having these successful experiences and seeing the emotions and the impact is what keeps you coming back to take part in this versus, I guess, withdrawing.
Yeah. I'm a coach, and it's important as a coach for me to be empathic with my clients. It's one of those core competencies that really helps connect with the client.
And as a coach, you really need to connect to the client, and empathy is core to that.
And also, to be a coach, it's important to me not to stay out of judgment and to be open and curious and present. And these are all important ways of being if the person is being empathic.
Yeah, to be an empathic person, or as a coach, the values of openness and curiosity are important. There are ways of being, and those are important.
And actually today in one of my coaching sessions, I practiced for the first time also empathic listening one-to-one with a client who wanted to explore a sensitive family issue.
And you used empathic listening with a person you were coaching with that wanted to explore a delicate family issue.
Yeah, and he made it clear to me that he saw it as a safe place, a safe space, that he could say what was on his heart without fear of being judged. And that is why he was able to be vulnerable with me.
Yeah, so he kind of expressed to you that he felt it was a safe space, that he wasn't going to be judged, and because of that, he could be open and vulnerable with you, and he expressed that to you.
Mm-hmm. So these are all ways of being that I've learned through my coaching training, actually, but now they're being reinforced by the Empathy Circle.
So you'd learned a lot of these ways of being through your coaching experience, and now the Empathy Circle is actually sort of supporting that and those ways of being.
Mm. So I guess what I'm saying is that I believe in being open and curious and present, that these are ways of being that belong in the empathy definition.
And these for defining empathy, openness and curiosity, I think there might have been another one, are ways of being that are important for defining empathy.
Right. And being present.
Oh, and presence. So presence, openness, and curiosity are ways of being for that are part of that empathic way of being or definition.
Yes, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
DJ, can I speak to you? Yeah, there's something that yeah, what is it? The blocks to empathy. You know, I think you were sort of addressing the blocks to empathy, that if you have a lot going on, financial pressures, all kinds of things, and that stress comes into the empathy circle, those stresses that can sort of block empath, or even not in the empathy circle, but in with it being empathic in general, that those are sort of blocks to empathy.
So the pressures that I was talking about earlier, financial pressures or extraneous pressures, they can be blocks that come inside the empathy circle and also outside the empathy circle that can block empathy.
And we don't want to block the blocks, right? We don't want to like, oh, I got stresses, I got this, I got all that. So we don't want to block the blocks. We want to empathize with the blocks. So
So we don't want to block the blocks. We want to empathize with the blocks of the blocks.
yeah, so coming into the circle, for example, and saying, because that's the truth, like, hey, I mean, I have financial pressures too, so I feel that stress kind of all the time too, and I can feel it's in my body, the stress is there, and it does inhibit that stress, kind of blocks the smooth flow of really listening to someone else. But I think it's a matter of sharing that stress and having it be heard by others. That's the empathic process.
So you're sharing that you have these stressors too, and throughout your experiences, you think it's important to share about those stressors to make it what's alive for you, and that it really helps take away those blocks of the blocks.
So that's the thing with with empathy, is being willing to listen to everything, that there's nothing cut out, that the stressors, the conflict, the fear, whatever it is all welcome, but we have a process of sensing into those. And with the empathy circle, we have a bit of a structure that helps with that.
So there's a structure in the empathy circles that we have to kind of help with bringing in those stressors, those conflicts, those fears. And there isn't anything that can't be brought into the circle, that it's a safe space.
Yeah, it takes time. Well, it can be a dangerous space in the sense there's, Colin's got his breathing inhibited, so it's scary. It's not guaranteed, it's not going to be, it can be very, I mean, I'm a little nervous about the whole, the issue that kind of came up, and I'm thinking of everybody's well-being. How do we manage this? So it's a bit of a stress for me too, but it's like if we just stay with the empathy circle, have a space to dialogue about it, that it sort of unravels those stresses and strains, given enough time.
So when Colin was speaking and he was having breathing difficulties, I mean, there is a little bit of a danger there. And, conflict can make sort of anxiety happen for everybody who's listening. And it was even for you were feeling a little bit of the stress. But if you stick with the empathy circle process, it does relieve the block to the block.
Yeah, it's sort of like a knot, and it's slowly little pieces of the knot unravel. But there's something about a commitment to the time, that it always takes time, and you got to have sort of that commitment to taking the time to do it.
So you're using the metaphor of a knot, and that it takes time to kind of unravel it, and you have to have the commitment to the time in order for it to work.
Yeah, so I think that's another part of empathy, is maybe in the definition, is the presence, commitment to the empathy, and to take the time that the empathy takes.
So this is another dimension to defining empathy, that there's that commitment to time and the presence to bring it forward.
Yeah,
as part of what we're doing here.
Yeah, I feel fully heard.
Thank you. Okay, I guess, Jana, you're busy? Probably Jana's busy. Do you want to stop now, Edwin?
I thought we'd go for 10 more minutes, then go to the full group.
Okay.
Do you want to do one more round, and we have a few minutes just or just go into open discussion? I guess we could do that too.
I think we do open discussion.
Okay,
I think we really kind of did a lot today. Yeah.
So any sort of feedback, comments? Yeah, Kara?
I shared in the comments a pyramid of emotional awareness. It was kind of, we all kind of talked about them in different ways, but this gives a nice visual representation of the reality of humanity, is that we are based on values, and then this have thoughts and feelings attached to them, period. And here's the thing about feelings and thoughts: they're not wrong, ever. The emotions are, period. And it's this magic of this empathy circle that allows us to say, just because you're right doesn't mean that I'm wrong. Your feelings are real and valid, period. Let's the process, let's unpack them a little bit so that we know how to behave with those feelings.
But I have to say that when you are interacting with someone in a small group setting, you're not necessarily doing an empathy circle, you're just interacting with people, and you have a task at hand. It's a work-related task. There's something to do. You have to do something and accomplish it. People start reacting and interacting and doing all of these things. They're positioning all the time. They don't know what they're feeling. They're reacting.
Oh no, we're not always aware of our feelings. That doesn't make them any less valid, but it sure does make them hard to control when you know, because awareness allows impact, and without that, it's 100% reaction. Agreed. Yeah.
Well, it makes them impossible to express. I mean, like, I can't say, you know, I'm really feeling uncomfortable here because you just made, you know, this comment and I'm feeling this feeling. We don't do that. First of all, it would take like really long time to get through anything if we were doing that all the time. People are constantly positioning themselves, and it has to do with power. It has to do with relationships. It has to do with a lot of things that aren't inside the empathy circle. So what I think what happens if you're inside the empathy circle, if you're in that container, like Jenna said, you do release a lot of this stuff that gets in the way of us being honest and open and loving and kind and being that human quality. I think we can be better humans within that container, but you can't walk around saying, do you mind if we do this in an empathy circle? I mean, you can't do that, can you? I mean, not today, not yet, right?
Well, there's the one aspect is this is sort of like a minimal viable empathy practice, right? And then how do we, by practicing this, we're sort of, I find I started embedding the awareness, the consciousness of empathy, so that when I go into other environments, maybe in a more, you know, focused, you know, task oriented, I don't have as much stress or needs to kind of be heard. I have more spaciousness. So I see this as sort of like a starting point for empathy, and that there's other things we can start building on top of this to the point where we could maybe have, you know, focused work groups that are more highly empathic. So
you both, Colin and DJ, you're coaches, right? Yeah.
Oh, yes, I am.
You are.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I'm a teacher.
Okay. Oh, all right. Yeah. Different language, different rules. That's fair. Well, so I do leadership coaching, and when there are projects to be done, this kind of facilitation is something I teach people to do. So you know how, I don't know if you've been pointing in the right direction, but on my screen, Colin, when he heard himself reflected back and he heard that he could do it, it hits different than when you say it yourself. So I use that to get productivity out of people, because when we hear ourselves, those emotions that we're too busy doing to address, suddenly you're like, did I really just say that? Oh, hold on, what I meant was. And so, yeah, I mean, can you stop and have a full empathy circle on the street all the time? Maybe not, but can you use these tools in every situation all the time? In my experience, yes. Yes, you can. Sorry for the language.
Yeah, thank you, Kara. I love your energy. I love your energy. I love your insight. Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely. I think that you have expanded me today. And you too, Edwin, of course, but you always do that. Yes. I can't even do the heart, but.
So Colin or Jana, any other comments or?
I think today was very much an experience for me. I really experienced the empathy circle in a different way, and I'm going to take a lot from it. I have more confidence in the circle. When I hear you talk, Edwin, about the empathy circle, there's this sense of confidence, unshakable belief in what I can do, and that comes with time, of course. But I'm just one step closer to having that confidence that that there's real power to empathic listening and the empathy circle.
Jen, are you in a space you can say anything there?
Thank you for letting me be here, coming and going, and for being here as present as I can be. And I appreciate this circle. We didn't define empathy too much. So I appreciate that Edwin said that you like that definition, Venerable Robina's definition of empathy and compassion being the same thing for all intents and purposes. So compassion, the Buddhists define as the strong wish to relieve the suffering of others. So it's really being present and then doing or not doing according to what would be the most beneficial at any time. It's really about embodying compassion, embodying empathy, being present there. So there's no contradiction. So yeah, so I'll just add that, and yeah, and that's it.
Well, in terms of relieving suffering, I think when we're heard, by whatever is alive for us by others, that there's something about that I think oxytocin gets released with that, and it counteracts, whatever pain or stress or cortisol or whatever we're having. So I think this just the importance of being heard by others, and knowing that you will be heard is sort of a healing. So I just closed the room, so we're gonna head back. We got
I'm going to run
50
and pee
seconds.
really fast. I will be right back.
Okay, we'll see everyone in the breakout rooms, and we'll have about 20 minutes to debrief there.
Okay. See you back there.
See you there.
You decide, and if you decide it's okay, Peter Pan.
Okay, well, I think we're all back. So in the actual session 1, we'd be doing an empathy circle. I haven't figured out yet what we would do when we come back. Maybe it'd be sort of a debrief, just like any learnings that you had, or any comments about the circle, and we can just go around and hear from everyone about that. Lou, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I think the most meaningful thing that happened for me in the circle is reflecting on teaching the balance between empathy being natural, being something we're wired for, and teaching. Is there teaching that is involved in people being empathic, and what is the relationship between those two things? So I'm thinking about that more. Yeah.
Okay, Wendy.
Wow. Yeah, just what sensing into empathy really means, that whole phrase, sensing into, and its connection with embodiment. Thinking about really what imaginative empathy is, whether, different definitions of that. Yeah, there was a whole range of things. Thank you.
Okay, Violetta.
My thoughts are more kind of logistical, and how are we wrapping everybody's definition of empathy, and how do we arrive at some kind of closure? And I'm not quite sure.
Okay, Colin.
Today was a real experience for me in the breakout room, where I really had the opportunity to connect with this felt sense inside of me after what had happened in the main room. and really connecting with what was going on in my body and being able to share that with others and have that reflected back to me was healing and kept me in the group, in the breakout room. Otherwise, I probably would have left. I wanted to leave. So I'm more convinced through this experience today that the empathy circle has a real power.
Okay, thanks, Colin. Kara?
I think what I got the most from all of this, confirmation of concept for me. I do a lot of emotional intelligence work with my work, and one of the things we say a lot is that just because someone else is right does not mean that you are wrong. And being able, empathy is being able to, for me, create that space for that, so that somebody can be seen, be heard, and you don't have to agree, like it, nothing, that they can have their feelings and have those seen, heard, and reflected, period. And the magic that that creates on a person and in a relationship and in a group is just fantastic. That's why I'm here, yo.
Great, thanks, Kara. Jana?
It was a precious opportunity to be part of this empathy circle. Thank you.
I'm glad you could make it, being in that environment there. So, Crystal?
Yeah, so my biggest takeaway today was confirmation that empathy is a personalized experience based on biological, sociological, all of these different factors, and how it's important when we're doing this to really map the customer. I mean, I use it because I'm in entrepreneurship, customer journey, but it's really the human journey. So forgive my faux pas there. And how it's important to perhaps do a self-analysis for those who are coming in to reflect where they are on the journey, and that might be something that you want to look at building in to the program.
Okay, DJ, we're just checking in. Oh, you had to restart your computer. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. So we're just talking about what we got out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had a really great circle. It was really good. I think that we all just kind of helped each other define empathy, and it really was enlightening for me because like Edwin explained to me, I was really talking about blocks to blocks of empathy and how people get misrepresented and misinterpreted because they're bringing in all this subconscious or conscious stressors that are extraneous to the experience. Even if it's not an empathy circle, you're still having this empathetic way of being, right? And so it can happen inside or outside the circle. But I really liked what Edwin was saying and Kara was saying and Jana was saying. It was just really great. And Colin, of course, was amazing. We just, we really gelled as a group. And I think that we really looked at this whole issue of conflict. And I think we came out of the group really understanding how important it is to add this new dimension to empathy. That has to do with being patient, and that it takes time. When there's a conflict that arises, it can't be swift. And Edwin said it's like a knot, and you're just untying the knot little by little, little by little. And I really like that. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So for me, we're kind of doing two levels. We're kind of doing sort of a prototype of the course, plus we're also sort of designing it as well. So it's kind of like two things going on at the same time. Our circle, I found we spent a lot of time just talking about, it was alive for us, from a little bit of the conflict and so forth, and just having a space to talk about that. I thought it was just really beautiful how it sort of unfolded, and so I thought that was really good. So in the course, so far with the outline, it'd be like a 30-minute sort of a debrief, And, we would go around just hearing from everyone. I'm not sure what else we would put into the end, but it's just something to kind of think about. I don't know if anybody has, we could just do one quick round of any suggestions. Like, we've gone through the intro section, we've gone through the breakout rooms. Everyone's talked about their definition of empathy and how it relates to empathy circles. And, the conversation will probably go all over the place, which it always does, because it's bringing up what's alive for people. So any ideas about what to do in the last 30 minutes besides sort of a check-in, a debrief? So, Lou?
Well, so we are saying that, what we're doing in the empathy circle is aligned with Roger's definition of empathy. And the purpose of the empathy circle is to have people explore, their own thinking about empathy and maybe how it relates to Roger's definition. So the closing might be something getting people reflect on how is your view of empathy? How does it match up with what we're calling Roger's view of empathy, to try to, get people to think about, so am I in alignment with what we are trying to do, or do I have a difference, or something like that?
Okay.
I'll just interject here because my thoughts are very connected to what Lou was saying. I was wondering if we could wrap it up in with the facets of the diamond, or maybe even have the break room discussions in this way. In this model, where do you find the definition of empathy, your definition of empathy, being mapped out, if that makes sense? So we kind of use that as an epistemological center, as this kind of claim to truth. Because the difference between saying what empathy feels like to me and saying what empathy is a conversation. One is about feelings, the other one is about truth. And these are different conversations. So when we have a training about defining empathy, we are working more with truth, and we're mapping it out in the empathy circle. Sorry. So that's my thought. And if we, because we take the diamond model as that epistemological center around which our whole discussion will stay. So I wonder whether in the closing debrief, or even earlier in the breakout rooms, we could say, now at the start of this training, where would you map, on which facet do you find yourself more glued to? I don't know.
Identifying with, or do you see that
Yeah.
that relates to empathy for you? Is it other-oriented, self-empathy, imaginative empathy? Where do you sort of relate to? Okay, cool. Crystal?
I just wanted to connect with what Lou and Violetta were saying, because we did discuss it in our circle. And Priyanka and I both went back to our story of origin, to where we related to our way of being in the present with our way of being as a child. And so to the extent that people can tell that story, that helps them understand also their blocks. And so I think that would be a beautiful way for people to have a call to action at the end, to ponder their story before they come back to the next session.
So I'm not quite sure. So somehow share your story and think about how that relates for at the end. So you have sort of an assignment to, okay. Okay, Colin?
I like the diamond as a metaphor, and maybe making more use of that, and maybe asking a question at the end: what has become clearer for you now? And using the analogy of polishing a diamond or cutting a diamond to have greater clarity. As simple as that, really. But I think that this metaphor of the diamond could be used more often. It's something that I, as a coach, connect with. I connect with visual imagery and with metaphors. It helps me to learn. So, yeah, That's what I wanted to say.
Is there anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
I really like everything that's been said so far, Colin, Crystal, Lou, you know, really relate. And I'm just wondering to connect that sense of a journey, you know, that it is a journey. It's not, okay, this might be your definition now. But thinking about that diamond, you know, what was your, you know, how did you think about empathy when you were 10, when you were 20, when you were 30, you know, how do you think you'll be thinking about it when you're 80? You know, it's this idea of a journey, that it's not static, and using the diamond, you know, to model that.
Okay, so, oh yeah, go ahead, Kara.
So I would reiterate everything everybody just said. I think that the last bit of it, having something that is a continual tie-in, such as the diamond, is a really good, besides just a good training tactic, it's a really good way to map how our progress is in the training. And then I think the call to action, having something that gets them from here to the next place so that they're in preparation. I think both of those are incredibly impactful when it comes to training.
Okay, so we just have a few minutes left. So I had I just shared this. Hopefully that's coming up. You see the closing screen. So this is there'd be like a 5-minute at the end, you know, hear any final trainer comments, review what we did in the session. So we reviewed the different things we covered, review what we'll do next, and mention next week's assignment. So next week, I guess we would say that we're doing other-oriented empathy. So that's the first part. And, you know, Lou, you're talking about Rogers. So that's really focusing on what Rogers' definition is next week. And the assignment was, well, there'd be like a feedback form. We would have empathy buddy calls too, just like we do with the other training. And then the assignments would be to read 2 articles by Rogers, which is The Empathic and Unappreciated Way of Being. There's a paper that he gave, as well as he narrated it. So he gave there's a video of him sharing, giving that paper. And then he also wrote a paper on active listening. So that would be 2 assignments to do for next week. And that would be what we will cover next week, is Roger's work talking about other oriented empathy. And I don't have a slideshow or anything for that together. So it's going to be a bit of just an empathy circle on other oriented empathy and on what we read from Rogers. So to really, start with his work. So any thoughts about that? Lou?
Actually, so that all sounds good. I mean, the fact that you're assigning them to read Rogers' papers before the next session means that this session is really more just about opening the topic of empathy and having people reflect on it, and the idea of bringing in Rogers' concept of empathy and kind of cementing that. That's not really happening in this session. That's happening in the next session by reading the papers. So that's fine. So actually the closing question you might ask in this session is, how is your thinking about empathy shifted or enlarged by your experience today? Because the idea is we're really just calling in people's thinking about empathy and exploring it. We're not really trying to teach them about Rogers a lot. That's coming afterwards. I want to raise, I have a concern about Priyanka. So she came back into the room and she was in our breakout, and I think she had 1 speaking turn, maybe 2, and then she dropped out. I don't know if she dropped out because she was needing something that was not happening in the circle for her, or if she had a technical problem or whatever. But I want to make sure that she's cared for. I mean, I think that she's got stuff. I think she's got a lot of feelings still about what happened in the big room, and I want to make sure that she is not just left alone with those feelings. So Do you plan to
Yeah, I'm gonna
contact
reach
her,
out
Edwin?
to her. I'll be
Okay.
reaching out to her.
All right, and I'm happy to be involved. If you guys want to do some kind of, restorative circle process or something like that, I'm happy to play a part in that. But I didn't want to use this session for that. So.
Great. Thanks.
And I'm a little worried that she felt like I was dismissive of her because I said I didn't want to spend the session doing this. And so maybe I'll reach out to her myself
Okay.
also.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to reach out to.
Okay.
It's really late there. It's like midnight for
Yeah,
her. So
that's true. That's a
this
good
has been
point.
a time slot that's difficult for
Yeah.
Priyanka because of the time, and she
Yeah.
she also did a circle before this, and we went for 2 hours almost. So we're talking about going into 4 hours. So
yeah,
I have all kinds of stamina. When it comes to empathy circles, I want to do a marathon at some point, an 8-hour marathon. So yeah, you're on board, Kara. Great. So that's it. Next, I'll send out an email with the assignments. Next week, we'll probably just do an empathy circle about Rogers, that his other-oriented empathy, which is often just called empathy, I think is what people are just calling empathy, is what, this other-oriented empathy that, so we'll just pick up at that point. It's not very highly developed. Like I put a lot of time into this section to give the overall framework, because I think once we have the framework, we can slowly start fleshing out the individual sessions. So with that, I feel good. We're right on time. So thank you, everyone. Give your jazz hands a goodbye until next week. I hope you can make it, and see you then.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
All right, Edwin, do you want to talk briefly?